Technology can be a transformative tool. It provides information, accessibility, and instantaneous connection. Yet these same benefits, if not appropriately harnessed, can create stumbling blocks. Do leaders allow technology to define organizational culture, or do they utilize technology to shape it? How does a leader embrace the interconnectivity of today's world while creating a culture of trust and authenticity among his followers? Ultimately, how does a leader leverage technology to influence culture and inspire the members of his organization?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. At this time, I'd like to turn things over to Dr. Johnson, who will introduce our afternoon panel, The Transformational Leader, Influencing Culture in an Interconnected World. Sir?
Thank you very much. Is this on? Hello? Okay, good. I am Brad Johnson. I'm delighted to be here. I'm glad that you all are here today for session number 3 in the 2015 Leadership Conference. You've been immersed in technology and leadership for the last couple of days. This last session features a remarkable panel of very accomplished folks in a variety of professions who are going to address a very specific element of the question we've been addressing in this conference, and that is the question of the interface of transformational leadership and technology. And it may be thinking social media, a variety of kind of implications there. As with the other panels, I am going to introduce each of the speakers in turn. Each of them is going to offer some comments from their own rich experience in a variety of professions. After that is over, certainly I hope that you're ready to queue up and be thinking about some interesting implications, some questions that might speak to you as you have thought about some of these topics, and that'll be a very engaging, sort of fun part of this panel session. I want to just reiterate a couple of corollary questions before we hear from our speakers that I'd like you to be stewing on and thinking about a little bit, and then listen to what the panelists say and ask yourself, you know, how does that address some of these important sorts of questions, and then take it from there in terms of your own thinking a little bit. So here's one. How do leaders use technology to define their organizational culture, or is technology increasingly defining the culture itself? And what's a leader to do is the kind of the key question there. And then another one, how does a leader embrace interconnectivity in today's world while creating a culture of trust and authenticity? So when I think about it, this is the relationship question. When we talk about transformational leadership, we're talking about a kind of leadership that's very interpersonal, it's very direct, it's built on trust and real engagement. How does technology influence a leader's ability to have those kinds of relationships? And then a last one, ultimately, how does a leader leverage technology to influence culture and inspire members of the organization? Can that happen? Can leadership be a friend, or not leadership, but technology be a friend and not a foe when it comes to being a transformational leader? All right, so having said that, I'm going to jump right into introducing our excellent panelists here, and I'm going to start with Harry Wingo. Harry is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and the Yale University School of Law. Harry served for over 6 years as a Navy SEAL officer. He has served as counsel to the U.S. Senate Commerce Committee, senior policy counsel for Google's D.C. office, and managing partner of West River Solutions, a technology consulting firm focused on cybersecurity. He is currently the president and CEO of the Washington, D.C. Chamber of Commerce. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Wingo.
Thank you, Brad. And I'd also like to thank the Commandant and to thank the Naval Academy and each of you for participating in this conference. My name is Harry Wingo. I'm class of '88 from the Naval Academy, and it's always good to come back home. This is a transformational place for all of you who are going through this here or graduates. You know how important Mother B is in our lives and will continue to be so. I also understand that there are over 50 schools. Other schools were represented, including schools from around the world, so I think that's great. I'm honored and humbled by the opportunity to talk a bit about transformational leadership and technology. I have been very fortunate to have technology to be part of what I've done since I graduated from the Naval Academy. Going into the SEAL teams, I have to say there is a lot of technology there, but what's important, one theme I'd like to underscore, is you can never forget the human element. In fact, technology is so important because it expands on what you're able to do with that human factor of teams. And I would say in this world now we have this great opportunity to use technology, be it social media. Who here has heard of cloud computing? Raise your hand. There you go. It's just the internet. The internet comes to ground somewhere, right? It's really just the amazing processing power. And being at Google for a couple years out of the DC office, I was able to see just that transformation that's happening faster than a lot of people realize. We have artificial intelligence coming online, machine learning, robotics. I mean, it's hard to keep up with technology. And then if you look at just the medical sciences and where things are going, it's an amazing world we live in, but we can't forget leadership is really about being there, just really focusing on the members of your team, the mission. And what I would say is give you a couple thoughts, because we don't have a lot of time. I'm glancing at my watch. I love history. Who here is a history fan? Excellent. You have to study that, particularly for you all who are in the military. Themistocles, raise your hand high if you know who Themistocles is. Hoo-yah. So he was a leader. There's a book by John Hale called Lords of the Sea. Naval Academy folks got to love that, right? It's the Athens and the birth, the Athenian Navy and the birth of democracy. Themistocles was a leader who realized, hey, the Persians are coming back, Battle of Salamis. He prepared for it by getting a new type of technology. But what made the difference was the Greeks and how they approached things. The culture, it really shifted from being if you were wealthy and you could afford to carry arms to actually everybody literally being in the same boat, right? Being in the same boat, new technology, triremes, 3 levels of wars, and then a battering ram at the front. But what made the difference is the Greeks had an approach to innovation, an approach to literally having their fortunes tied together. And we know that's one of the powerful things about the United States. We have a lot of allies who are represented here. But if you fast forward, inspired by another leader, we know Dr. Martin Luther King. We celebrated him recently. Who here has seen Selma, seen the movie? All right. Who here has seen American Sniper? All right, both great films. When I think of Dr. King and I think about leadership, back then there were things that were thrown up in front of people trying to fight for civil rights. For example, you couldn't really get in the newspaper as easily as you can get online or get on the internet now. I remember talking to Representative John Lewis, who's from Atlanta, when I was at Google. And one of the most powerful things I got is when I told him about how amazing it was, with all of our being able to reach people by phone or blogs and what Google represented. And what he said to me, being one of the people who with Dr. King was trying to fight for equal rights for all, he said, if we'd had the internet back then, we would have gotten the work done a lot faster. And if you go into now, I mentioned Themistocles with a purpose, cybersecurity, information security. One of the underpinnings of our society, our culture, it's such a dangerous world we live in if you look at both criminal activity as well as other activity, more organized. And being a leader, a lot of you will be challenged. There is a war going on in a way already, but being able to adapt with your teams, to reach out. We have some others on this panel who are even more steeped than I am on cybersecurity. But what I would say is, whatever area you go into, even if you're going to be on the civilian side, that's an example of where technology will not only be something that allows you to work together and increase your teams, it is actually where the fight and the struggle is. So this is always a constant thing. I will say now, so what do I do now? I am the head of an organization that has almost 700 members in Washington, D.C. We advocate for business-friendly policies, but what do I love about it? I have about 12 people on my team. I go to an office. We lobby. We also get collectively what's going on with businesses large and small in Washington, D.C., but also with the region. and we try and teach folks about opportunities. But what I love most is that it is about leadership. I have a lot of people, 12 people on my staff, and just every day, how do we, tweet, intermodal communication, but never forget the most important thing is being in front of people. There's no substitute for stopping by, because, who here likes neuroscience? I do. I'm a fan of neuroscience. Mirror neurons. It's just how we're wired. It's just one of those important things that you understand, and if you can step outside of yourself, and that's one of the key things for leadership at its core, is if you're willing to sacrifice yourself, it's not a sacrifice, it's a purchase, right? If you believe in the team and the mission, and for you to live everything that you do with your teammates and with those you work with in a way that underscores that you're there for the collective good, I think that's one of the most important things, and that will always transcend technology. But technology is critical now. And I look forward to participating in the conversation.
Thank you very much. Panelist number 2, Jim Messina is founder and CEO of the Messina Group, a full-service consulting firm with offices in D.C. and San Francisco. He's the architect of President Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign. Mr. Messina is widely recognized as one of the world's premier public affairs and communications strategists. He has served as White House Deputy Chief of Staff, as well as Chief of Staff to several prominent members of Congress. The Messina Group currently serves clients in numerous countries in a variety of sectors, including energy, healthcare, and global sports. And he just mentioned before this presentation, he's just wrapping up the campaign for the British Prime Minister, so never a dull moment. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Messina.
Thank you very much for that very nice introduction. It's a huge pleasure to be here and speak to all of you. So I'm going to tell you a story about transformational technology, and it's going to revolve around the 2012 Obama campaign. 10 days before the election, the president called me for our nightly 11:30 p.m. chat, and he said, "Hey, Jim, I want you to fly tomorrow and meet me on the campaign trail in Milwaukee, Wisconsin." And I said, Mr. President, we have 5,000 paid staff, 2.1 million volunteers, we're 10 days out, things are a little busy, maybe we could do this on the phone." And he said, "Well, I'm the President of the United States, get on the plane." And so I did what any of you would do, which is got on the plane and flew to Milwaukee. And I had kind of a second motive, because that morning in Milwaukee, he was being introduced by the woman that at the time I wanted to be my wife, Katy Perry. And I thought she and I had some future destiny together, and so I was backstage hitting on Katy Perry as much as I could, and the president walked up and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Jim, I want to talk to you now." And I was like, "Not now." And he's like, leader of the free world, come with me. And so I'm like, okay. So we go, and he said, "Jim, I want to ask you my question." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Before I ask you my question, I want to remind you of something." And I said, "Yes, Mr. President." And he said, "If we lose in 10 days, the world's going to blame 2 people, you and me." And he's like, "I'll be okay. I can write books. You're never going to work again." And I burst out laughing and said, "Yes, Mr. President, I understand the ramifications to my career if we lose." And he said, "All right, here's my question for you. Today, the Gallup poll has me down 4, NBC has me tied, CBS has me up 1, ABC has me up 1, Fox News has me down 47. He said, MSNBC has me up 58. He's like, he's like, "So what do your numbers say?" And every night for 18 months, we ran 66,000 computer simulations of the election. And I said, "Mr. President, this election has been over for 10 days. You'll win 332 electoral votes. It won't be very close. Congratulations, you're going to be President of the United States again." And he said, "So here's my one question for you. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? Because you're betting everything on it." And the reason I was so sure was technology and data. And it started out 2 years before that on a beach in Hawaii. On Christmas Day 2011, his military aide called and said, "The president wants to see you." And at the time, I was his deputy chief of staff. And they said, "He wants to take you for a swim in the ocean." And I thought to myself, this is a bad idea. And so, but again, he's the President of the United States. You do whatever he tells you. So I went and we were kind of treading water in the ocean. He's like, you're leaving the White House. And I thought, I knew it. I'm being fired in the Pacific Ocean. This blows. and I said, why? I kind of thought I was good. This job has been very helpful to my dating life. And he said, you're going to leave to run the reelect. And I'd wanted that job. I was telling my amazing Navy escort, Henry, that when I was in the 4th grade, I wrote a paper saying I either wanted to be the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos or the president's campaign manager in the 4th grade. And after John Elway screwed me out of the first thing, I realized all I could do is politics. And so I said to him, yes, Mr. President, I would love to run your campaign, but I want one promise. And he said, what's that? And I said, I want you to promise me you're not going to run the same campaign you did last time. And he said, Jim, I don't understand. You know, we won that one. And I said, yeah, I was there, best party of my life. But if you run the same campaign, you'll lose, and you'll lose badly. And he said, why? And I said, well, think about it this way. 2 years ago when you ran for re-election, we sent out one tweet on Election Day because we thought it was a stupid technology that would never go anywhere. Facebook had grown 10 times the size. The smartphone didn't exist in the middle of the first Obama campaign. And all of that stuff was completely changing. And so he said, okay, fine, go build me a modern campaign, but go seek the best advice. And so I went around the world and talked to every smart technology person who would talk to me. I sat on Steve Jobs' deathbed right before he died. I talked to Steven Spielberg and Eric Schmidt of Google and tried to imagine what the next campaign would really look like and what technology would be. And in the end, we realized the singular truth to what the next 20 years is going to be. And we put it on every single one of the walls of our campaign office, which is just this simply, that data is the single most empirical truth, avenue to the truth. Through data, you could make informed decisions and use technology to do two things. Technology allows you to save time and make a connection with people, which is why I think this panel is so important. Because through technology, you can truly make a connection that gets your team to do things you want them to do. And we ended up using technology to change the way politics is run forever. In part because we were desperate. During most of that campaign, the president trailed his opponent. And in part because we had a team that understood the technology and data could be used to truly interact in a way that had never been done before. That campaign was 2 years ago. And you know, 2 of the top 5 social media sites that all of you use every single day weren't invented even for that campaign. Like Snapchat didn't exist in the 2012 Obama campaign. Raise your hand if you or your friends communicated Snapchat. Yeah, how about Vine? That didn't exist either. And now 2 years later, you guys use every single one of these. My clients, I have clients like Uber and Airbnb. I know a lot of you use Uber when you've had a couple too many cocktails, Henry, and need to get back. And need to get back home. None of those things existed. But now you can use all of that technology to reach out to people and use it to do what you want them to do. And so I think all of those things are going to be at your fingertips. And whether or not you're able to use technology going forward will be the decisive factor on whether or not you can engage with your team. So with that, I'll turn it over to my esteemed colleagues.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Our third panelist is Rear Admiral Thomas Hank Bond, U.S. Navy retired. That is a cool name, you'll have to admit. He is Senior Vice President at Route 9B, a cybersecurity company headquartered in Colorado Springs. Admiral Bond is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and holds graduate degrees from the George Washington University and the National Defense University. Admiral Bond has recently completed 31 years of active naval service with assignments in the submarine force and naval information technology systems. Admiral Bond has recently served as Director of Cyberspace Operations and was the Chief Information Officer at the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, and the United States Northern Command, where he focused on homeland defense. So please help me in welcoming Admiral Bond.
Well, thank you so very much for inviting me and this panel. What an august panel! I feel very honored to be sitting amongst all of you. I'm happy to contribute today. Professor Johnson, thank you for just your leadership in this. I want to give just a couple of shout outs here. First of all, this just speaks to legacy here. So I'm class of '83. My father was class of 1959, and he's passed away now. But I want to give a shout out to Professor Tomlinson. I think you're sitting back there, class of '59, my dad's classmate. So there's a connection that I have, sir. Thank you for continuing to serve in a great way to really develop the next generation. You've developed many generations. Thank you, sir. I want to give a shout out to my son, Henry, class of 15, 14th company. Woohoo! All right. So I would like, I'm really excited and eager to get into the question period. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to just set a context for perhaps some follow-up questions and talk about my most recent assignment, active duty, in my roles as the J6, which is responsible for sort of the IT infrastructure, and then the J3 deputy, which I served as the director of cyberspace operations at NORAD and US Northcom. Those are two commands, but they basically have almost all the same staff, with the Canadian staff plugged in on the NORAD side. So the NORAD mission, it's the only binational command in the world that shares sovereignty between two nations, the United States and Canada. It's a great command with a great mission in history starting in the 50s. The mission there is to evaluate threats against North America in the space and air domain and in the maritime domain, and to produce warnings for both the leaderships of both countries, and then to do command and control type activities in the air and space. So shoot down missiles that are coming at us, shoot down airplanes that are coming at us that may do harm. Now, before 9/11, we were looking outside. All our sensors were looking out. We never thought that we might actually be attacked from within in the air. After 9/11, U.S. Northern Command stood up as a combatant command. So for those of you that are learning about the Unified Command Plan, the way that we actually exercise military power, it goes from the President to the Secretary of Defense, and then it goes directly to the combatant commanders. So Central Command, responsible for the Mideast, European Command, Europe, and NATO forces as a dual duty. Northern Command is focused on defense of the homeland primarily, and that's a U.S.-only type mission. But they fit nicely together, and it's great duty for the Navy to be in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado Springs. I found, though, when I got to Colorado Springs, that the thing that I'd been trained to do my entire life as a naval officer was to be expeditionary, where if I had the resources, the people, the equipment, whatever it took, and I had the mission, I could do whatever I wanted, from space to the seafloor. I could do it all. In the homeland, the military, we're a little bit aloof by design. We don't have authorities to exercise Title X authorities within the homeland, unless it's a really bad day and the president asks us to do that. So if we're called in, it's already a bad day. And we have privacy type concerns. And I'm a citizen, so I am all for all of that. And so I just found it was very interesting to be in the homeland looking at a mission space that was foreign to me in terms of how do you actually execute and deliver defense effects within the homeland. So some of that may come out in our conversation. So just a couple of things when it comes to the interconnectedness. A combatant command, the mission is to exercise command and control over forces, over U.S. forces or combined forces, to actually deliver effects that you may get in mission-type orders from the Secretary of Defense, from the President to the Secretary of Defense. So on that staff, we're primarily a knowledge organization. The widget we deliver is decisions and plans about future decisions. That's it. And of course, we're very connected with all our subordinate forces that are going to actually go do a thing that we need them to do on a bad day. The interesting thing about delivering command and control or a collaboration space as the J6, so as the guy responsible for the IT infrastructure, is to make sure that you're using the information technology that's available and you're providing the right demand signal for all those providers to actually help you make better decisions. So my boss, four-star general at the time, his number one requirement was that he would understand situational awareness of all threats against the United States. So it didn't matter if it was originating in North Korea from a missile threat, an ICBM missile threat. It might be foreign fighter flow into Syria or northern Iraq, because somehow that's going to play back into a threat that's going to generate back against us. So you can imagine all the different threat environments that we're thinking about. And so the deal is, how do we look at all those disparate data sets that would, from the sensing realm, and turn that into situational awareness that actually trips the right triggers at the right time in terms of the right indications and warning to actually make a decision and do something. And I can tell you, if you walked into the NORAD Northcom Command Center right now, it would be in color. It would be coordinated chaos, but very ordered in the way it would produce. Lots of people doing lots of things. But what you would be, if you thought about it a while, you would really see displays of data, visualization of data, that's not really much different than in the way it was in the 50s. Two-dimensional displays of three-dimensional data. So, as a leader in IT, providing services that are going to allow our commander to make a decision. And by the way, I just say, you know you are a leader when you do when you do these three things. You prioritize and make decisions on the use of scarce resources. If you are doing that, you are a leader. You own the culture of your organization. If it's a gooned up organization and people are moaning and groaning and complaining, or if they're flying high because they're motivated, and you're the one that's accountable for it, you're a leader. And leaders own the culture in their organization. And the third one is you're the one responsible to cast the vision. So you're given a mission, you're the one responsible to cast a vision for how you're going to accomplish that and get everybody lined up that works for you to charge forward and carry out your part of the mission set. So if you're doing those three things, you're a leader. Well, in my world at NORAD Northcom, it's all about the data. It's all about making decisions. And it's all about transforming a headquarters into the, beyond the information age. And to do that with people, frankly, the military come and go, but I will tell you, as qualified and excellent as our civil servants are, IT represents a big threat. Also, you've got big systems integrators. Just name the top big 5 IT companies. They're the ones that we've traditionally leaned on to develop solution space and the big applications to be able to visualize data and make decisions. Well, if you know anything about this last 20 years of converging capability on smaller devices, Moore's law acting out in your pocket, then you know that one of the things that IT does is disintermediation it removes the middleman. It removes the person that Bitcoins are going to fire the banks. There's going to be resistance from banks because of Bitcoins, because of digital currency. Just watch it happen. No need for a middleman to get in the way when you own digital currency. Same thing with my workforce. As I cast a vision for a transformed headquarters with data, some of them look at it as a threat because their position may go away because I don't need somebody to actually grind something out. Big companies may be displaced as we learn how to develop little a apps in our command and control infrastructure. So these are some of the themes and resistances to change and transformation that I faced, and it's well worth follow-on conversations. Lastly, I spent a lot of time thinking about, as the director of cyberspace operations, to think about how to develop and command and control cyber mission forces from the NORTHCOM perspective, and developing the force structure, how to fight in a new space in the homeland where we don't really have viable warfighting concepts like we do overseas. Those are big challenges where the information technology framework is the collaborative environment, but it's also the threat environment that's contested. And so I think that would be a good opportunity for more questions along those lines. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you. And our last panelist is Pete Blackshaw. Pete is Global Head of Digital Marketing and Social Media for Nestle Corporation. He's a graduate of the University of California at Santa Cruz and the Harvard Business School. He's the author of the book, Satisfied Customers Tell 3 Friends, Angry Customers Tell 3,000. What a great title. He shaped marketing strategy for Procter & Gamble, and he recently served as chairman of the board of the National Council of Better Business Bureaus. So please help me in welcoming Mr. Blackshaw.
Well, I must say I'm quite intimidated by my fellow panelists, but I'm absolutely honored to be here, and I have to open up with an amazing shout out for Megan Hunt, who was my escort. She showed me all around, and you did something that I think is really important in communication, branding, strategy. You turned me into an advocate. I knew this was going to be an amazing place, but you gave me a tour this morning. You gave me an experience. From the incredible lunch to John Paul Jones, and I posted some Instagram photos, already got a ton of likes. And importantly, you know, I'm bringing some incredible gifts to my kids. I thought I'd just bring some photos, but they're all going to be wearing navy blue. So great job, and thanks so much for hosting me. At Nestle, I moved over to Nestle about 4 years ago, just for perspective. In addition to selling products like this, we sell about 1.2 billion products a day. We have about 340,000 employees. And in the digital space, that means I have to oversee the management of over 800 Facebook pages, hundreds of Twitter accounts, countless other, a little bit of activity on Snapchat. And it's a huge challenge, and it's an opportunity. And I also deal with all the crisis management protocols, which, as I'm sure we know, whether it's in military or business, that gets really, really complicated. I spend a lot of time thinking about what are the leadership skills to win in this highly disruptive environment. And I typically focus on kind of 3 key building blocks of business transformation. One is listening, engaging, and inspiring and transforming. The listening is how we absorb different types of data signals, similar to what Jim was talking about on the strength of data that's out there. And in the digital world, whether business or government, you've got different types of data signals, whether it's the database of intention manifested through search, whether it's consumer conversation, which can be infinitely revealing of brand value, or how consumers migrate across sites, which can also give you clues into unmet needs. And so how does the leader process those new signals into action? And for more conservative companies, it means kind of trading up from the focus group or the survey to the unprompted data sets. The second part is engagement, and marketers have always engaged, but more at a mass level. Now we're looking at much more intimate, hands-on, one-to-one relationships executed at scale. Really difficult. You have to have very, very smart systems in place, and you have to have all sorts of contingency plans for if your engagement strategy goes wrong. And of course, across the different markets that we manage at Nestle, it can be quite, the experiences can be quite diverse. And then the part that gets me most excited is that how do you think about digital or technology, not just as a communications tool, but as an operating principle, as something that can fundamentally transform and inspire the organization to think much bigger. What I've learned in working with hundreds of leaders, not just digital leaders, but leaders that are kind of, their opportunities are shaped by a digital context, is that what's important today is to learn how to manage, not resolve tension. I think in large enterprises, we want absolutes, we want black and white, and what's critical is that we ride that tension. And I think in this environment, we're full of tensions, or what I like to call digital dualisms. Dualisms are ostensible opposites. When I was a student of political theory in college, we used to debate political dualisms. But a digital dualism is something like stimulation versus integration. Should technology or digital be a standalone, stimulated effort, or should it be something that's integrated into everything? And the answer is yes and yes. Formal versus informal power. In large organizations like Nestle, of course formal power matters. There's a hierarchy, there's a process of advancement. But we also are very good at using internal social media to drive greater collaboration. In that type of environment, informal power really matters. There's almost a digital Darwinism that allows, great knowledge to rise to the top. And the leader of the future needs to manage that tension. Another one's ROI versus intuition. I agree with everything you said about the power of data, but I think sometimes we're slaves to it, when in fact our intuitive side, which actually is also processing a lot of data from our own personal experience, can guide good choices. And what I've generally found in looking at who's really winning, which businesses are getting ahead at Nestle, it's that leader that can combine the intuitive understanding of the digital space, and a lot of that is informed through their own personal experience. I mean, what's unique today, it's not like back in the 50s, people were creating TV commercials in their free time. In today's environment, people are creating content. They're doing the same thing marketers and businesses are doing, and that creates a very, very useful context to drive key action. Another one is what I call kind of filling versus creating, which is, so often we wait for that job to open up to fill it, when in fact in today's environment, the opportunity is to shape careers. Because what's happening in today's digital environment is technology is softening silos. It's creating a huge blur factor, and the leader can kind of shape their own position. I have to be careful about saying it because there's no guarantee, but there is so much transformation in companies that the ability to kind of combine branding and e-commerce, sales and marketing, product development and marketing, it's huge. And the leaders that are getting ahead can actually write that new job description versus just waiting to fill. Now, I've said a few words. What I wanted to do is dedicate a couple minutes to just give you a sense of the type of culture we've been trying to create, which is very based on leveraging the very, very diverse knowledge across Nestle. What I'm going to show you is a short clip of a program that I initiated a couple years ago called the Digital Acceleration Team, where we bring in 12 of our top leaders across our 80 markets to spend 8 months together, kind of almost like a Google or a hackathon or a startup. Watch the video and you'll understand, and maybe we can use that as context for the later discussion. DAT stands for Digital Acceleration Team. We started this program in early 2012, and it's grown tremendously. We have over 45 DAT graduates so far.
We are creators, enablers, and ambassadors.
We think faster,
better, cheaper, and smarter.
We are here to lead
by leveraging digital and social media.
To build brands
and delight consumers.
DAT is dedicated to take full advantage of digital and social media to inspire business results and innovation. We focus on listening, engaging, inspiring, and transforming.
A key focus of the DAT is to think about digital as much as an operating principle as a communication channel.
Fully committed to talk the walk, the DAT continues to be a center of experimentation and breakthrough change within the organization.
We have to think speed and stay proactive.
We think faster and act faster.
Innovation at that speed.
Embrace change and listen to what the consumer is saying.
It's very simple. It's about us moving faster.
I feel proud to be part of a company with a big commitment to nutrition, health, and wellness.
A big focus of the DAT is all about leading by example. It's highly experiential. We want them to experience and live and breathe and eat digital, and then internalize that into how we develop best practices in marketing, sales, e-commerce, all those different areas.
We're working closely with our Silicon Valley Innovation Outpost team to leverage startup culture to deliver a competitive advantage for Nestle.
We are learning the skills to create highly effective and engaging content.
This year, we were approached by the NRC to work with them on a pizza task that was directly linked to the innovation pipeline. The DAT is truly inspiring Nestle to think and act differently.
We are currently working with an emerging market on a pilot that aims to improve business efficiency through mobile technology.
One of my greatest sources of pride and passion is working with the DAT team members. They bring an incredible sense of can-do, optimism, consumer centrism, and kind of speed of market that I think is so important.
DAT, in my view, is the most concrete, tangible manifestation and evidence of our ambition to be leaders in digital and social media.
I've been incredibly proud of how DAT members have gone to markets and led digital, led major brands, led major initiatives, started their own DATs. Again, we're creating a network effect at Nestle where we're bringing in some of the smartest and most passionate leaders, not just digital leaders, but leaders who see digital as the DNA of the new brand building power.
The DAT model is scaling fast around the world, so we are committed to build and nurture the Digital Acceleration Network.
The DAT team continues to raise the bar at Nestle, and this is really important because digital is raising the bar and companies need to catch up and meet those new expectations. The last thing I'll say is that test and learn is so important. When we introduced this program a few years ago, we had no idea it would go viral within our markets. We have 14 markets that have now replicated the model, and all of them now feed one another from a social sharing perspective. And I think that, again, whether government or business, I think the leaders need to drive that, fast iteration, fast fail type of culture and really leverage network effects. I think the strength of technology is how we are really smart about leveraging distributed network effects. And what I've learned quite humbly, being an American who kind of joined a multinational company, is that the digital and technological revolution is taking place far beyond the U.S. borders. That's both that's mostly a huge opportunity. It's how do we really get inspired by that activity, and that's what we're trying to do that. But that diversity of learning can take place in any context, whether domestic or international.
All right, so can we just thank all our panelists one more time? All right, well, it's amazing to me the diversity of things that we heard. We just saw a video clip where technology was front and center, and yet people looked happy. They looked like they really were enjoying being at Nestle and working. So
they were eating chocolate.
They were eating chocolate. So it dispels maybe a bit of that incongruence thing we made. We heard about ancient Greek ships and warfare strategies. We heard about Katy Perry, and I'm still trying to figure out how that. No, we heard some great stuff about elections, and again how technology and digital issues might factor in, and what often has been a very direct interpersonal enterprise. And then certainly a lot of good stuff about situational awareness and resistance to change in a military context. So with that, what I would like to do is begin this really robust, interactive, fun part of our panel session where you're jumping in and interacting with us. If you can start kind of queuing at the microphones. I guess this is panel number 3, so you're all veterans at this point. Begin queuing up and thinking about questions that have been stimulated for you. When you ask the question, if you'd like to direct it to one or more of the panelists, that is great. If you just want to throw it out there and somebody on the panel can tackle it first, that's fine too. So however you'd like to do that. Why don't we begin with you, sir? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sinclair Cabasel. I'm from the College of William & Mary. Thank you for having us at the Naval Academy, and thank you guys for coming to talk to us today. Something that I've noticed with a lot of our speakers is that they're very focused on the commerce side of technology. How can we use technology to sell more and get in touch with our customer base, as well as connect the company and the people that work for us. But something that a question that I'd like to direct towards the Rear Admiral Bond is that it seems that America has been on the forefront of technology in terms of consumerism, but not really militarily. We don't have our own cyber branch of the military, for example, as many other countries seem to do. We don't have like forces that are very dedicated to, you know, protecting us on the cyber front. And so I believe that leaves us very vulnerable. So how do you see America in the future leading the way in cyber technology in terms of warfare?
Yeah, great question. Thank you very much. So in terms of what the military's role is in mission space that's outside of the continental United States, we're actually developing a cadre of over 6,000 operators that will be focused on taking it to the bad guy in another place. So I think we're certainly, I think we are in a leadership role in doing that, and doing that at a very high level of readiness and capability. I think maybe what you're seeing, which I completely agree with, is what does it mean to really defend the nation? So when you think about defending the skies, things that are kinetically coming at you, there's a military role. When you think about something from the sea or a threat from land, there's a military role. When we talk about the contested space, cyberspace, in your home, in the private business area, data centers, all these capabilities that are resident or that are owned by the United States or form part of our economic base and our critical infrastructure that makes us secure as a nation, when you think about that, then you're right on. Who is defending that? We have, the military has no direct role in that. We have outside stuff coming in, distributed denial of service attacks coming in from server bases that are outside our physical borders. We have a role there. But when it comes to actually command and controlling forces that would defend our space in the homeland, does not exist right now. So the FBI is primarily responsible for the law enforcement piece. At every state level, there is responsibility under the governor. The governor does have a militia that wears a uniform, but factoring that in and coordinating that is really complex. There are the privacy issues, our bank, transactions, business transactions, and protecting those fall right squarely with the owner of the data. There's no military or government-provided highway, if you will, that mandates a safe and secure way to do this. So that is something that we're grappling with. That is the challenge for this generation for developing the intellectual framework for what I call a warfighting concept, because it is a contested battle space, yet it has a primarily civilian feel to it. So there's a discontinuity in the way we even think about it in the military. It's like, can't touch that, can't touch that. Well, who's going to touch that? So the president has provided some very excellent guidance for the private sector working with the federal government and how to work together securely. But right now we're in the want of a very clear and integrated warfighting concept that defends the homeland, because we're not a command economy per se. We don't direct in a command way of how something's going to be done in the private sector. That's what makes our nation great. The problem with information technology is it's very collaborative. The vulnerability with information technology is it's very collaborative, and it can be used against us. So we're going to have to lead from more than just the military. It's going to have to be a JQ public rising up and saying, we can do this as a team. It's a whole of nation type response that's required. And so I'm not satisfied with where we are. And so my now civilian job, that's the space I'm operating in right now.
Thank you, sir.
If I might real quick, Sinclair, I wanted to jump in, and Admiral Bond, excellent answer. Cyber, it's interesting, it raises the component about leadership in the context of citizen action and civilians and around the world. And you think of the players in this space, it's so complex. Groups like Anonymous, for example, and hackers. I actually have a certified ethical hacker certification I got about 2 years ago, DoD 8570. I encourage everybody to get that basic approach, but really it's about, think about the United States as an example. And I know we have representatives from Mexico, Canada. It's great to have hemispheric representation here. But imagine we can't cede this technology only to others, only to the military, only to the government. And I was fortunate at Google, for example, Vint Cerf was one of my colleagues. One of the original, he was working at DARPA in 1974. Him and Paul Kahn actually put the protocols in place that led to the internet. It's amazing. But he would talk about cyber safety. And it's inherent on all of us to lean in. And even if you're not going to go out there and learn up how to put a honeypot or IDS and use Snort to protect something and just learn. But let's not forget, and this is what excites me about cyber and the responsibility we have, is we're so used to the kinetic world. But there are things, and going to law school after being in the military, that there are uncertainties. Some of the things that limit, and rightly so, the U.S. military, for example. But imagine, if you will, if we had a cyber response exchange. Same way we have a mercantile market or a New York Stock Exchange. What if you had a place where a machine cluster was, and if I'm Bank of America or Sony, and I'm feeling some pain, and I actually lived through, I was at Google when the attacks out of China happened. So I know what a Fortune 100 company does, what happens behind the scenes, their reluctance, even though the government has a very capable team. I'm telling you, people like Larry and Sergey, there are teams that are very capable, and not just the United States, on the private side. But what if we actually had more of a structure where you could voluntarily share? And this is teed up. The president has mentioned this, and it's Congress wants to do this in the United States. But if you were able to put a commercial aspect to say, I want to put a kind of a reverse auction, and people can respond. But we also have to see more of a response like Estonia, who suffered, attack, and now guess what they're doing? They're teaching first graders how to do code, because they realize the new rifle is a computer. The code is mightier than the sword. So I think we all have to be engaged, because this has implications for oppression, for tyranny. If we're not able, the same way that our Minutemen, as far as our history in the United States, were able to pick up a rifle and defend freedom, that is the world that we're in now. And so I would really encourage each of you to remember that. And even if you're not a hacker or a coder, just look at the policy side. There's some way that you could lean in, pay attention to these issues. So Sinclair, I want to thank you for joining us from William & Mary, but great question.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Is it okay if we jump on? Yeah. Okay, all right, go ahead, sir.
First, I would like to thank the panelists for coming out and giving us your insight. My name is Eric Dominguez from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. So over the years, we have been seeing an emerging technology, especially in big data analytics, where it pulls in information from your public life, professional life, and personal life. And it curates services and can even help us create a process through data of leadership. And privacy over the years has become a huge issue. And so my question is this: should we continue to pursue those technology and services for the sake of efficiency and productivity?
Okay, good. Jim, or?
Sure, I'll take the first shot at that. It's a great question. It's a question that America answers very differently than the rest of the world. My work in Europe, they take privacy to a much different level than the United States does. We have a different theory. Our theory is we want Uber, we want Snapchat, we want all these services, so we're willing to give up some of our privacy. I think that is an ongoing discussion our country is going to have. I think you're seeing Congress grapple with that, and the government grapple with that. The Stop Online Privacy huge debate that happened across this country 2 years ago was really about how far we're going to go in privacy. In the Obama campaign, we had between 600 and 800 pieces of data on every single voter in every battleground state. So much so that I could predict your behavior within 0.2% of how you're going to behave. In the UK and Europe, we can't do any of that. In fact, you can have very little of that ongoing data. And corporations like Google, who's a client of mine as well, are currently sitting in front of Parliament in the EU having a discussion about how much of that stuff they should retain, and do people have an individual right to privacy? And that's something that we haven't discussed in the US. I think the answer to your overall question is yes. We should absolutely pursue all of those things. We have a competitive advantage. American companies lead this in the world, and I totally agree that this will be the next generation of jobs. And so we can't retrench at all. But I think you're going to see, and it's your generation that's going to lead it, an absolute discussion we're going to have about privacy. And it's you guys who are going to have the real decisions. 43% of the incoming class of White House interns who are accepted to be a president intern couldn't serve and had to withdraw because of something stupid they put on social media that could embarrass themselves or the president. 43%. These are 4.0 students from the best universities in the country. And they had to withdraw because of things they had put on the internet. So their right to privacy then doesn't seem so much fun. It's why Snapchat is now worth $20 billion, even though they have no revenue. Because you all can have, finally, a place you can go to have a real right of privacy, even though technically you don't. So whatever you do, do not think you do. But I think those are ongoing decisions that your generation is going to make.
I think from a company perspective, this is a critically important issue, and I definitely the issues that Jim highlighted about regions like Europe having a higher threshold, maybe bar of intolerance on a lot of these issues is very real. And what we've tried to really think about is almost putting ourselves in the consumer's shoes, is really thinking about what are the right consumer engagement principles that are transversal, kind of work across multiple nationalities. And a lot of it kind of comes down to, I think, common sense, commonly accepted beliefs and principles around full disclosure about how data is used, keeping feedback loops open if consumers want to provide input or criticism into the process. Being proactive in some of those murky areas like social media, where I do think there's some very important disclosure issues. Is the blogger paid or not? I do think consumers, need to know whether an endorsement is incented or not. And these are things that we're trying to figure out, because at the end of the day, we can only work as a business if we nurture trust. And I do think this is an area where a lot of very legitimate questions are being raised, and I think that we're going to need to be very proactive. And there may be some trade-offs in terms of how big data is leveraged in a context when we're in a covenant with a new global consumer that has, I think, high expectations. I think what today's teens may dismiss today may become a different story in a few years when they realize the consequences. Great question.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead.
First off, I just want to say thanks to all you guys for coming out of your busy lives and speaking with us. My name is Brandon Kaplan. I'm a stamp scholar from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And my question's towards Mr. Messina and Mr. Blackshaw. So the idea of personalized marketing and marketing to an individual and creating a conversation between brands and consumers is becoming increasingly popular. Do you believe that this is the future of campaigning and marketing, or do you see it going in a different technological direction?
You want to go first?
Sure. Well, it's fast evolving. I think even if you look at the way the major platforms like Facebook and Twitter have evolved, where there was a high focus initially on community management of kind of consumers that you own through opt-in becoming fans. Those have kind of shifted more towards paid ad models where they're kind of piggybacking on the consumer, the consumer testimonials, but they're kind of it's kind of the blending of paid and earned media. So I think that the hard challenge for companies, probably I'm sure for campaigns as well, it's just how you properly manage expectations with consumers. And this is a big theme in my book. I think the consumers have a high expectation of responsiveness. So if you're going to participate in setting expectation of kind of an intimate dialogue, responsiveness, you got to measure up. And that means, not only being there on your work hours, but, having a real 24/7 mindset, and that includes the weekends. And for companies, this is like a really big challenge. It's a completely different type of model. So expectation management is absolutely critical. And then proper training, so there's consistent practices, is absolutely critical. I do think we tend to romanticize the simplicity of managing consumers in this social media environment. It takes a completely different level of investment, and there may be some real big trade-offs. I mean, to kind of fund the community manager, we may have to slice money off of TV or other investment areas, and that's where things start to get really interesting.
I think the answer to your question is yes, but not how we expect. So personalization, I think, is absolutely coming. It's where everyone's putting money. 2 years ago, 11% of Americans had addressable TV where you could send TV ads right to their TV. If the Comcast merger goes through, that number will be 60% by 2017, and I'll be able to target you wherever you are and go get you. But part of what we do now is help roll out movies, and we just did Godzilla, and we just did American Sniper and other things. And that's a pretty interesting test case because you have $100 million to spend in a 1-month period, so you can go test everything. And what is true is the average American sees 2 million ads every year. And to process all that information, they look for verification in a way they haven't. And that's really what social media is, right? You decide who gets in your Twitter feed. You decide who's in your Facebook world. You decide who you like or friend on Instagram. And for the first time in a very long time, what your friends and family say is more important to your consumer behavior than ever before. Because you get so much spin, you get so many ads, you get all of these things. And so you really turn to your friends and family to authenticate your decisions. And when you're trying to figure out what movie you're going to on Friday, you say to your friends, hey, what did you hear about American Sniper? How about the new Black Hat movie? What do you do? And that reputation is made and lost in moments. And to your point, one of my clients is Delta Airlines, and Delta figured out very, very quickly that every time there was a storm, their reputation took a hit that their TV ad campaign couldn't fix. So they moved 25% of their TV ad budget to literally hiring a bunch of college graduates who respond to every single tweet and Facebook post anyone does about Delta Airlines. And if you're mad and say, my flight's delayed 20 minutes, you get a tweet right back from them immediately. Because they can't fix the problem that they just created if you're mad 10 days later, because to your book, you go tell 300 of your friends how much you hate Delta. And so that is a huge change in the way they do business, even from a year ago. And they now spend 25% of all their budget responding to every form of social media because they have to.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mike Stanley. I'm a student at Boston College, and I have a question primarily for Mr. Messina and Mr. Blackshaw. A quick quote from Nate Silver's book, Signal and the Noise. From 1967 to 1997, in 28 out of 31 years, the winner of the Super Bowl was considered a leading economic indicator, where if a team from the National Football League won, the stock market rose on average 14%, and if a team from the American football team won, the stock market dropped about 10% on average. This is a statistical relationship that's so significant that by chance, it should only occur 1 in about 5 million times. So how do you toe the line between using all this information and data that's available to make better analytical decisions, learn more about your consumers, versus you using intuition to really make decisions that make sense to you?
I think Signal of the Noise is a great example because the author did a New York Times magazine story 1 year before Election Day and put the president on the cover and said, "Is Obama toast?" And he said that he had a 17% chance to get reelected with his data. And a year later, we won an electoral landslide. And I think your question is exactly the right one. I think we could debate the intuition thing. I'm very skeptical about intuition because I can't prove it. And I think a lot of people have used it for a very long time to push wives' tales that just don't work. It's why I think Madison Avenue is not a great way to go spend my advertising dollar. But I think we both would agree that what message is and what leadership truly is understanding what your inner compass is and understanding what your message is and then using data to inform that. Barack Obama didn't change any of his policies to get reelected because of the data I showed him. We just used our time and our money better because of the data. He knew who he was and he ran as that person, and that's why he got reelected. If he had allowed me to show him data to change his opinions, he would have gotten beaten and beaten badly. So I think that's where we probably come together in agreeing that messaging and understanding who you are and what leadership really is matters more than data.
Yeah, and just to clarify my intuition, I mean, there's a lot of data that processes into intuition. My point is that in large companies, I mean, I've worked at both Procter & Gamble and Nestle, leading digital strategy, and I think what sometimes holds the leaders back is sometimes a dependency on kind of very old school analog kind of data methods. You know, what's the focus group? It's yesterday's form of numerical modeling. And what's happening today is that we're all doing social media. I'm actually running the numbers on my personal Facebook page, Twitter account, Pinterest page every day. Moms are, doing this, with incredible efficiency, and they're multitasking. And, to the moms at Nestle who are leading business, I do tell them to kind of lean on a lot of the intuition because they're going to move a lot faster, and don't be hostage to the $100,000, Nielsen Bases test. I used to work for Nielsen. I sold a company to them. I know that where the data, their data matters, and whether, our own kind of relevant experience in digital can just move us much faster. So it's not like putting our finger up in the air. We're processing data, but a lot of it's from our relevant experience. And there's enough data there. There's the 80 for the 20 often to help us move forward. What we don't want is that leaders that are paralyzed by this need to have the statistical model to find the bathroom, okay? And because we are at a disruptive period. For companies to gain competitive advantage, you're gonna have to make a few leaps, kind of informed, not even guesses, but just kind of informed judgment, and it's gonna come from different sources. Sometimes it's increasingly that's gonna come from Jim Messina's big data models, but a lot of what we do in our personal lives will also help us move forward quite seamlessly.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you for your remarks this afternoon. My name is Midshipman Third Class Brian Cully from the United States Naval Academy, originally from Anaheim, California. My question is for the panel, just at large. The social media platform, Yik Yak, both local and anonymous, is very widespread across our campus and campuses across America. How can we as students and future leaders promote respect and maintain a culture of acceptance in the face of the anonymity that the technology often allows us?
Anyone want to address the Yik Yak factor?
Can we have another question? That's
a great question. I'll jump in, Brian. I think really just this is one we're showing a different type of leadership because we really haven't broken it out. It's small groups, or if you're talking about addressing a large market, a nation, or the world. And I think here it's one of those where sometimes you just have to follow your convictions, jump in, and have a clear voice and speak the right. And there is a saying, speak truth to power. Here it's kind of speaking truth to the masses, right? And knowing that it's going to go out there. Otherwise, I think with anonymity, it's just one of those, it's one of the things that you face. And so how can you factor that in? And if you step back and if you think in the context of the type of conflicts that you're going to face, the things as a naval officer or Marine Corps officer, anyone who's on that team, let's face it, this is the softer side, right? We know soft power matters as much as hard power, and that's just a specific case of it. I don't know if I have a better answer than that, because you're not going to, I don't think we're going to pull anonymity out anytime soon.
Well, yeah, I think a 200-year-old example of Yik Yak would be the Federalist Papers. Anonymous,
nice.
Broadly. However, it led to a discourse, a responsible discourse on how we were going to govern ourselves as a federal entity under a new constitution. So you had, so if Yik Yak draws down the conversation into passionate, chemically generated responses from your reaction to something, then that's the kind of discourse that you're going to foster and engender. Is that the kind of culture and society you want? Or you could use that to have a responsible conversation where you need to have a little more context setting. Now, maybe not in so few characters, but that's the challenge, is to be able to do that.
I love that answer. I want to jump in of what the Admiral said, because what a great example. Leadership is just making sure that you are there, find your voice, use your voice, and you'd be surprised. Actually, don't be surprised. It can change the world. We've seen in the kinetic world, a gentleman who could set himself on fire in Tunisia, was it, I think, and then just set off a chain of events. There's so many examples, and that's what's powerful. These new technologies really are just an extension of the human spirit and the values that we hold. So I think really underscore what the Admiral said, is just use your voice out there.
Anyone else?
I can't beat John Jay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for all being here and providing your inestimable knowledge and experience. So thank you. I'm here with Temple University, Michelangelo Clora, Temple Veterans Association. My question would be to the panel, whoever's interested in taking it. We talk about in the Intro to Cybersecurity course in our Management Information Systems, the people, processes, and technology. And the processes are usually pretty good. The technology is good and getting better. The weakest link, as people have sort of alluded to, is often the people. So I wanted to know how you feel that we as leaders in the military or out, and as a nation, impress this on others, make that apparent, because that seems like the largest security risk that we're seeing quite frequently. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. So to go back to the reference to Vint Cerf. So when Vint Cerf, one of the two that developed the protocols for the internet back in 1973, of course it didn't go live till 83. Back then, you could not export cryptographic keys from the United States. So the protocol established and the architecture established here, there was no security built into the fabric of the internet. Now, had we to do it again, there would be that possibility to build in things. That still could be defeated, but it's the person that is the issue there. So I would say one way to look at it from an organizational standpoint is, how did we go to get people to wear seatbelts? I mean, there was a campaign. I mean, when I was a kid, we jumped from the back seat to the front seat to the, my parents were going nuts because my brother and I were just jumping around in the car. Now, they may be screaming their heads off, but those little critters are strapped in to these belts and they cannot move. And so how did that happen? There was a campaign built on some sort of a moral platform to go forward. We license people to drive cars. There's a minimum standard. At your company, you may have some requirement to go through some minimal training before you actually can touch the keyboard and get on to the network. So I think there are a lot of metaphors in the physical realm that relate. I would say we're getting much smarter about insider threat kinds of things, and some of it from just stupidity, but some of it from malintent, and how you actually help people to use the tools without abusing it, and a lot of that's just training. So a lot of times, it's the user who's the abuser and makes stupid mistakes that cost the company a lot of reputation and things. So I think you're right on. I think those are maybe some thoughts on how to go forward. Leaders need to establish a framework by which you can actually make that palatable, because as soon as you bring a new rule in to govern your network, there's going to be resistance. It just has to be tied to the value of the safety and security of your information.
Thank you.
Sure.
I want to say first, thank you to the panel for being here today and giving us your time. Rodney Jackson, coming to represent West Point. My question is, through my career, obviously being a military personnel, transformational leader is something that's been kind of like on the crux of me, wanting to be a transformational leader. You're always taught that. So my original thoughts is I'm going to show up to work every day and be transformational, and I found that that was not necessarily the case. You know, some days were just day-to-day business, which led me to believe that the environment sometimes shape being transformational, and in the environment comes opportunity. So you really get the opportunity to be transformational in those fine moments. And so with that being said, you know, I think about technology and how it's impacting those. I heard you talk about your campaign with the president and being in the ocean, and the opportunity to talk about Twitter was there. And I hear you talk about Selma and American Sniper. There was an opportunity for those individuals to be transformational. How has technology forced transformation upon you, and how have you seen technology shape your abilities to be transformational through the careers?
Great question. Broad question, so a lot of leeway to
Short answer, I worked for a brilliant commander named Jim Stavridis, Admiral Stavridis, when he was a strike group commander. So he was responsible for a carrier battle group and all the ships and aircraft associated with that. His thing was, we're going to do 10 projects. We're going to try to do more than 10 projects during a 6-month deployment. I expect probably all of them, but 1 or 2 will not give us the results we want. But 2 of those are going to be great. So he let everybody know that could do something, that had resources to try stuff. He let them know that there was a safe place to try. We weren't going to be wasteful. However, he wasn't demanding that everything would produce the expected outcome. So he developed a safe place. If you are a leader who's transformational, you will develop an environment, a culture that provides a safe place to actually innovate, and you won't shoot the first guy that wastes some money trying a new thing. Now, that's great when you have a budget, and I think we may answer the question a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Just my build, you know, I mentioned that one of the first foundations that we put in place at Nestle is just getting really smart at listening. I think listening helps shape the context. I mean, we listen because there's a time and a place to advertise to consumers. There are moments to exploit. There are openings. And I think, you know, having your ear to the pulse through different data signals, I think, enabled by technology is what puts leaders in a great position to figure out where there are openings. I mean, in marketing, we call it adaptive marketing, but for leaders, I guess it's just a kind of a technology version of opportunism, but but there is a very unique opportunity to absorb those signals in ways that the way forward becomes much more obvious.
I think the most important thing is to have a culture of innovation every single day. I think the Rear Admiral has it exactly right. A lot of things are going to fail, but if you have a culture of innovation saying every single day we're going to learn and we're going to get better, this stuff is all moving so fast that yesterday's rules are tomorrow's, you know, dead wrecks on the side of the road. And so, you know, the average American will change careers 8 times during their career. And to be competitive in this world, you've got to continue to innovate. And the leaders that I respect are the people that continue to learn. You know, my mentor in politics is an 80-year-old guy who is still learning how to code at 80 because he thinks he needs to. And those are the guys that are going to continue to be relevant in the future.
I couldn't agree more. And Rod, what Jim just said, what's been said by others. And as far as this panel, like influencing culture in an interconnected world, if you look at where the military is going, and I'll just lay it out there. There's one example on cybersecurity and the question about people. I would love to see the service academies, because there you have a place where innovation in cyber could really happen in a fast way. So imagine the kinetic watch stations. Each of the academies, or I know West Point Air Force Naval Academy, set Merchant Marine aside for a second, but 36 companies. What if in addition to where the plebes, you know, stand watch, if you had a laptop there, you had a VMware instance, and if you were getting hit every week with real attack, you know, signatures out of DHS cert, you had to respond. So imagine what would happen if at the end of the year you graded the companies internally, and the color company, the best company, was recognized. But how interesting would it be if we had a Commander's Cup for the responses over the course of that year? And then you could just iterate after that. The fascinating part is that if you layered machine learning, AI on top of that, what a phenomenal platform for innovation, for learning. And it's just an instant. You could easily invite other schools to participate, civilian schools. It could go global. But that, that type of innovation, definitely the SEAL teams, Special Forces, it's there. It was there at Google. That's how Larry and Sergey took a back rub. Anybody here ever read that? That's their paper that they did on how to, the math and science. Well, it's the same, but you want to fail quickly, you want to fail up, you want to learn. And really, there's a saying, and I'll leave you with this, the masters failed more times than the beginners even tried. So you have to have that right environment and that culture where you allow that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, go ahead.
This question is, my name is Teddy Riddell. I'm a senior at Boston College. Thank you to all the panelists. This question is to all the panelists and Dr. Johnson. As most of us will be taking leadership positions in the next year, couple of years, I was wondering how each of you have handled leadership, the power that comes with leadership, and the relationship, not only in the first couple of years of your positions, but as you've risen through the ranks and positions of your life.
So are you kind of asking about the responsibility that goes with it, how you manage that piece? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So again, a broad question that might relate to more reflection on your own experience that way. I suppose especially the issue of power and how that might corrupt or facilitate what you do.
So briefly, the fundamentals don't change. However, the gravity and seriousness of the outcomes change greatly. And it's very possible if you're not sensing or listening, so I really, really appreciate everyone that's talked about just the sensing piece, for you to be, because people, the more power you have, the more isolated you become. People nearer to you could mislead you into the way you think your organization is. So your eyes and ears will tell you one thing, which may be very much not true. I would say the thing that changed for me was the requirement for me to do deeper sensing sessions further into the organization to make sure that what I thought was happening was really happening. And I always learned that I was wrong.
Teddy, I'll throw something out there and then get to the answer, but think about this. I think the best leaders create more leaders or other leaders. And for me, it's been a framework of really just remembering that if you're not careful, you can have blinders on, or you may become deaf. And there's actually a study that shows that that's the case. As positions of power, you have to work for that. But I think really it's just about mindfulness and really making sure that, as the Admiral said, you're making those connections as directly as you can, and never forget your role on the team.
I'll just repeat what I said earlier for emphasis. I think it's critical, and I've learned this at all stages of my career, that it's important to manage, not resolve tension. I think leaders, especially today, deal with a lot of ambiguity, blurriness, disruption, and you have to get very, very comfortable. As I think about some of the missteps in my career, it's where I kind of look for that absolute, and it kind of calcified around me, and I found myself trying to dig out of really bad assumptions. So just manage and navigate the tension, but don't expect to entirely resolve it.
I've had this challenge a couple times. It was the biggest challenges of my career. Both in the House and Senate, I was the youngest chief of staff when I got named. And I remember both times thinking to myself, I am so utterly unqualified for this job. I am screwed. And when you asked the question, I thought about four things. So first of all, the most important thing, your reputation is everything.
Yeah.
What people say about you, your word has to be your bond. And I grew up poor as hell in the middle of nowhere, Montana, and I've got to have kind of some great jobs. And part of it is, once I said something, it was always going to be the case. I think that's a big thing. Second is people want leadership. If you walk in with a plan and buy them into the plan and have them help you build it, they will follow you. But people don't, I think, want, in the end, everyone to be a leader. They want someone to walk in and say, we're going here, let's go. The third piece is a great mentor of mine said, half gin and half tonic, which isn't a drink. It is a way to live your life. Especially as young leaders, you come in and you really want to be a leader, so you're just a hard ass. And it has to be fun every once in a while, especially when you're working the hours that you work in corporate or military life. Every once in a while, you have to have fun. And the last thing, President Bush's campaign manager told me something that turned out to be the most true thing, which is the last month of the campaign, if you're not useless, you haven't built a good organization. So if you get hit by a car tomorrow, if your organization just shuts down, you haven't trained leaders underneath you. Every single person around you has to be able to do your job, because the day they put you and give you a better job, someone below you has to do that job. So to your point, building leaders is a very big chunk of business.
And you asked about my perspective, but I'm a college professor and have no power of any kind. We do have to wrap it up, but honestly, I think with what little power I may have had in the course of my life, I try and remember to keep the heart of a mentor, and just remember that if I'm focused on taking care of folks who look up to me or depend on me and see how I can guide them, that really helps to temper, any power that I might have. I have been getting some signals from the folks in charge that we're going to have to leave it there, but for those of you that didn't get to finish asking questions, if you could linger around, because we're not going to race out of here, invite you to do that. And could you all just join me in thanking our panelists for their time?
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your insightful contributions this afternoon. On behalf of the conference, we'd like to present you all with a small token of our appreciation.